Welcome, my bountiful friends. This is part 2 of the Ursula K Le Guin deep dive. Before we start, please can I ask that you like and subscribe this video? It's greatly appreciated. And as always, warning, spoilers ahead. So without further ado, let's begin. Le Guin's most significant works span multiple genres, but her deepest impact was undoubtedly in science fiction and fantasy, where she infused them with uncharacteristic philosophical inquiry and anthropological depth. Her most acclaimed works include the Earthsea series and the Heinous cycle, but there's also a wealth of standalone novels as well. Regardless of which genre we're talking about, all her stories were always heavily laced with deep themes and ethical questions, which goes some way to explain how she was able to garner repeated Hugo, Nebula and Locus awards. Her writing reshaped the literary landscape by challenging easy genre conventions and expanding the emotional and intellectual range of such forms of literature. Beginning with 1968's A Wizard of Earthsea, she introduced readers to the archipelago world of Earthsea, where magic is governed by the balance of nature and the power of true names. The series follows Ged, a young mage whose journey from arrogance to humility mirrors a Taoist path of self-knowledge and discovery. Later volumes, such as The Tombs of Atuan, The Furthest Shore and Tahanu, written in 71, 72 and 1990 respectively, shifted focus from heroic quest to intimate psychological and ethical dilemmas. The final volumes, Tales from Earthsea and The Other Wind, deepen the series' themes of death and reconciliation. Earthsea is significant not only for its mythic structure, but for its evolution, transitioning from a traditional fantasy to a feminine-infused, anti-authoritarian reimagining of power and identity. The Heinous cycle is a loosely connected series of novels and stories set in a future where human-inhabited planets are rediscovering each other through interstellar diplomacy. The Left Hand of Darkness, written in 1969, is perhaps the most famous novel in this series, but The Dispossessed from 1974 is another close contender. Subtitled An Ambiguous Utopia, it contrasts an anarchist society with a capitalist one, using non-linear narrative to explore time, freedom and revolution. Other key entries into this series include Planet of Exile, City of Illusions and Four Ways to Forgiveness. These works are notable for their anthropological realism and their refusal to offer simplistic moral binaries. Instead, they present cultural relativism, ethical ambiguity, and the possibility of mutual understanding across differences. Outside of the Earthsea Chronicles and the Heinous cycle, perhaps her most significant work, and my personal favourite, is the standalone The Lathe of Heaven, written in 1971, where a psychologist patient has dreams that alter the very fabric of reality, resulting in the former attempting to craft the perfect society. This novel probes the ethics of intervention and the limits of control. Across all these works, Le Guin's legacy is one of transformation, of genre, of character, and of consciousness. Her fiction invites readers not to escape reality, but rather to reinterpret it. Her writing style is marked by clarity, precision, and a poetic restraint that allows deep philosophical and emotional currents to emerge. Her prose is often deceptively simple. She lets the characters' actions or inactions speak for themselves, and the silence and lack of description carries an immense weight. She often employed a third-person omniscient voice, which granted her narratives a mythic tone, but she also maintained intimacy with her characters' inner lives. Sentence structures varied from short declarative lines to long contemplative passages, and this created a rhythm that mirrored natural speech and thought. This fluidity allowed her to shift seamlessly between exposition, dialogue, and reflection, often within the same page. Her language is deliberate and thoughtful, shaped by her lifelong engagement with language as both a tool and a mystery. She regularly consulted dictionaries and usage manuals as part of her writing to understand and expand the living texture of words. Her background in anthropology and mythology is evident in the way she constructed fictional cultures, naming systems, and intricate rituals that all serve as structural and thematic anchors and are far more detailed than what you find in most works. They give her worlds a sense of authenticity and coherence. Her style invites contemplation, often through understatement and silence. Atmospherically, her work tended towards a heaviness of thought and emotions that were almost elemental in nature. She often invoked landscapes not just as settings but as living presences. Oceans, deserts, forests and mountains often functioned as characters in their own right. In Earthsea, the archipelago setting is infused with wind, salt and stone, creating a almost tactile sense of place that mirrors the protagonist's internal journey. In The Left Hand of Darkness, the icy planet Gethen is not merely cold, it is isolating, introspective and spiritually demanding. Her atmospheres are rarely frenetic, they are rather elegantly spacious, slow-moving and often tinged with melancholy or quiet awe. Dialogue in her work is crisp and natural, often serving as a vehicle for philosophical inquiry rather than simple plot advancement. Her characters speak, often with restraint, and what is unsaid often carries more weight than what is spoken. This contributes to an atmosphere of introspection and subtle tension, where meaning unfolds gradually rather than explosively. Ultimately, her style and atmospheres reflect her core artistic values, which are humility, balance, and the pursuit of truth through complexity. Her writing invites readers not to escape into simple fantasy, but to return inwards to themselves, to become more aware, more attuned, and more open to the mysteries of existence. Her body of work is a tapestry of interwoven themes that reflect her lifelong engagement with philosophy, anthropology, ecology, feminism, and metaphysics. Her fiction consistently challenges dominant paradigms and invites readers to reconsider assumptions about identity, power, and the nature of reality. Rather than presenting themes as didactic lessons, she embeds them organically within her characters, cultures, and landscapes, allowing the meaning to slowly emerge and reveal itself to the reader. One of her most persistent themes is that of identity and duality. Her characters often grapple with internal contradictions, cultural dislocation, or transformations that reveal hidden aspects of the self. In The Left Hand of Darkness, the androgynous inhabitants of Gethen embody a literal duality as they shift between male and female states, which forces the protagonist Genli I to confront his own gender assumptions. And after this exploration of duality, it's not merely limited merely to the aspect of gender. It extends to political ideologies, spiritual beliefs, and psychological integration. She frequently invokes the Taoist principle of yin and yang, emphasizing balance over opposition and portraying identity as a dynamic interplay rather than a fixed essence. Ecology and interdependence is an important theme. Her writing coincided with the popular take-up of ecological consciousness, and this desire to champion nature and for the call to protect it permeates throughout all her works. In The Word for World is Forest, she contrasts the harmonious forest-dwelling Athsheans with the militaristic colonizers who seek to strip their planet for resources. The novella is a clear indictment of wanton capitalist greed at the expense of the environment, and it also explores the psychological consequences of ecological destruction. Similarly, the Earthsea series presents magic as a force that must be used in accordance with the balance of nature. Its misuse leads to chaos, while restraint fosters harmony. These themes are never simplistic. They reflect a deep understanding of systematic theory, indigenous knowledge, and the spiritual dimensions of environmental stewardship. Power and its discontents. Power in Le Guin's universe is rarely heroic or triumphant. Instead, it is examined as a relational force, one that can corrupt, liberate, or transform depending on how it is wielded. In The Dispossessed, she contrasts an anarchist society with a capitalist one, exploring how power operates through scarcity, hierarchy, and ideology. The protagonist, Shevek, seeks to transcend these systems through scientific and philosophical inquiry, embodying Le Guin's belief that true power lies in communication and connection. Across her works, she dismantles the myth of the lone hero, favouring collective action, ethical restraint, and the wisdom of elders and outsiders. Cultural relativism and anthropological insight. With a background steeped in anthropology, she brought a unique ethnographic lens to her work. Her Hainish cycle often features protagonists who serve as observers or envoys for a league or federation of worlds called the Ecumen. They are tasked with understanding alien cultures without imposing their own values. This theme of cultural relativism is central to many of her novels, where the act of listening becomes a form of diplomacy and transformation. She resists the colonial impulse of many science fiction narratives, instead offering models of respective exchange, mutual learning, and the celebration of difference. Silence, mystery, and the sacred. Her writing is suffused with a sense of the sacred bordering on the esoteric. In a non-religious spiritual sense, we encounter mystery, silence, and the ineffable. Her characters often undergo spiritual journeys that involve solitude, loss, and revelation. In The Furthest Shore, Ged's journey into death and rebirth is framed as a descent into silence, where language fails and only presence remains. Her use of silence is thematic as well as stylistic. She often leaves gaps in her narratives, trusting readers to intuit meaning rather than spelling it out for them. This respect for the mystery aligns with her Taoist influences, which emphasizes the value of the unspoken and the unknowable. In summation, her thematic landscape is vast and intricately layered. Her fiction invites readers into worlds where identity is fluid, power is relational, and the truth is found not in conquest, but in communion. Through ecological wisdom, feminine insight, and metaphysical depth, she offers no simple answers, but instead leaves open pathways, maps for navigating the complexities of being human in a world that is always changing. Le Guin's critical reception and literary legacy are among the most profound and enduring in modern literature. Initially categorised within the margins of genre fiction, namely science fiction and fantasy, her work steadily dismantled the boundaries between such literary writings, earning her a place in the canon of American letters. Over time, critics, scholars and readers came to recognise her not merely as a genre writer, but as a philosophical novelist, a stylistic innovator, and a cultural commentator whose influence transcended category. Early in her career, her work was met with admiration from within the science fiction community itself, though she was often overlooked by mainstream literary critics due to their prevailing bias against genre fiction. Her breakout came in 1969 with The Left Hand of Darkness. It won both the Hugo and Nebula Awards and was praised for its radical exploration of gender. Critics began to take note of her intellectual rigour and poetic style, and the novel became a staple in university syllabi, especially in gender studies and comparative literature courses. As her career progressed, her reputation grew exponentially. Her Earthsea series, originally marketed as a children's fantasy, was re-evaluated by scholars for its sophisticated engagement with Jungian psychology, Taoist philosophy and feminist themes. Critics highlighted the series' philosophical depth and its subversion of traditional heroic tropes. Meanwhile, her Hainish cycle novels were lauded for their realism and nuance, with scholars emphasising her innovative treatment of time, identity and culture. By the 1990s and 2000s, she had become a revered figure in both academic and literary circles. She received numerous accolades, including the National Book Foundation's Medal for Distinguished Contribution to American Letters and the title of Grand Master for the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America. In 2016, the Library of America began publishing her collected works, a rare honour for a living author, placing her alongside literary giants such as Faulkner, Baldwin and Wharton. Her legacy is multifaceted. She is credited with elevating genre fiction to a level of literary respectability, proving that sci-fi and fantasy can be vehicles for profound philosophical and social inquiry. She inspired generations of writers from Margaret Atwood to Neil Gaiman, and her influence is still very much evident in contemporary discussions around gender, ecology, and narrative ethics. Her commitment to linguistic precision, cultural empathy, and moral ambiguity reshaped how stories could be told. When one looks at polls over the last 10 years of the greatest sci-fi books ever written, a pattern quickly starts to form. Frank Herbert's Dune takes the number one spot approximately 80% of the time, and the rest of the top 10 is often highly predictable too. You can expect to see 1984, Neuromancer and Hyperion to all make an appearance. Another perennial inhabitant is The Left Hand of Darkness. In fact, about a third of the time it takes the number 2 slot, and on rare occasions it even beats Dune to the crown. I feel that this is an apt state of affairs. In Dune, the reader bakes in the heat of relentless desert sands, while in The Left Hand they freeze in the eternal drift of snow. In Dune, we have a sweeping, largely impersonal story about mythic figures fulfilling their cosmic destiny of altering the nature of a corrupt empire, and this all takes place on a single planet, while in The Left Hand, we experience a tightly contained experience of the intimate relationship between two highly detailed individuals who are both trying to bring an isolated planet into contact with a beneficial cosmic community. June and the left hand are therefore very much the yin and yang of each other. And in the Earthsea Chronicles, Le Guin gave the world the foundations of a proto-Harry Potter. In Ged we have a young boy who travels to a magic school and who gets a scar on his face from fighting with his own shadow nemesis. And all the while the story details a moral development and maturity within the protagonist. In truth, Le Guin has probably covered everything in one form or another in her own unique way. When one picks up one of her books, you are guaranteed a story in an intriguing setting with relatively unpredictable turns of event and a course of deep brain food to keep the grey matter ticking over days after the novel has been finished. One of the other signs of just how good a writer she is that it is relatively easy to remember big chunks of the main plot of any one of her books years after having read it and put it down. One of the other things that stood out about Le Guin was the weird parallels between her and my favourite author, Philip K. Dick, who I've already covered in a separate video. Both were born less than a year apart. PKD was born in December 28, while Le Guin was born in October 29. Both spent their formative years in Berkeley, California, which was a nexus of intellectual ferments and cultural experimentation in the mid-20th century. Their shared geography is more than coincidence. Berkeley in the 40s and 50s was a crucible of post-war idealism, academic rigour and counterculture stirrings. Le Guin's home was filled with anthropological discourse and mythic storytelling, while Dick's early life was marked by instability, metaphysical curiosity, and a growing distrust of consensus reality. In fact, they both graduated from Berkeley High School in the same year, though neither recalled meeting each other at the time. PKD was described as reclusive and sickly, often perceived as a resident ghost of the school, while Le Guin moved through the same halls with her own quiet intensity. So imagine if you had a time machine. You would be able to see two future titans of science fiction orbiting the same adolescent space, unknowingly preparing to reshape the genre from radically different angles. Both absorbed the intellectual atmosphere of the Bay Area, but filtered it through vastly different lenses. PKD through paranoia, theological inquiry and ontological fragmentation, and Le Guin through Taoism and cultural relativism. Her work nearly always subtly asks us to question ourselves, our emotions and our beliefs, and those around us. She asks us to look at our standing and place within society and to gauge it honestly. She also asks us to look outwards at our societies and our governments with fresh eyes and to have the integrity to challenge them when their decisions are not morally sound, and to push back on them when they try to compel us into unethical practices. She advocates for an inner and communal spirituality. In Le Guin's world, we all have a value and a place in a mutually supportive society of family, friends and neighbours, and it's up to us all collectively to realise that community. And once we have managed to stand up on our own 2 feet together, we may find that there are other similarly minded communities elsewhere waiting in the wings to contact us to join a larger collective. So what are your thoughts on Le Guin's writings? Which of her stories did you find the most interesting or surprising? Which of her characters and which of her settings did you like the most? Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that bell icon for more deep dives into the world of literature. Until next time, keep reading and remember, if you feel alienated from your society and question the way the world works, then it's probably best to undertake an inwards journey, explore the frontiers of your reality and confront and integrate your shadow self. Until next time, have a safe journey.